They wanted to come in, but they wouldn't leave their stuff out.
No, they were just had to put their stuff away. They were upset.
Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to let you know.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. They're upset about it. Yesterday we like, and it wasn't. It actually, as long as you're not concerned about it, I don't take it. But having like signs Did you tell Jeremy? What? Did you tell Jeremy, or did he not walk over?
You didn't walk over.
Okay, I'll text him. Should we get started? Okay, everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
If you all want to come in and take your seats.
It's good to see you. Did you drive down?
I started Friday.
Okay, good morning, everybody. If you would all join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please stand. Mike Aaron is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, and now I will turn it over to the commission to start the meeting.
Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me? No? Okay. This one's on. Okay. Better? I got to enunciate, so. Closer, closer, closer. Okay. How's that? So. Can you hear me? There we go. Oh, okay. Okay, I got to get close to the mic here. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Independent Redistricting Commission public hearing. And so I am Derek Watchman. I am the vice chair of the commission, and it's my pleasure to be here. We'll introduce everybody in more specific terms later, but I first would like to call this meeting to order. And this is our 14th meeting of our Independent Redistricting Commission. This is our listening tour. I'd like to remind everybody that given COVID-19 and its prevalent, I'd like to ask you to follow the Arizona Department of Health guidelines. If you're not fully vaccinated, you should wear a mask in public. If you'd like to participate from home, each of these meetings is being broadcast on WebEx, and I'm sure we have quite a few that are on WebEx, and so just a health note there. Please note that if you'd like to make a comment, you may do so by signing in with staff, as you saw outside, and filling out a public information card. If you haven't done so already, please fill out our Community of Interest survey. It's online at irc.az.gov. That's available. There's also a QR code on the signs outside and at the desk, and so please go to the link and fill that out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our staff that's here and out in the front. So we also have an American Sign Language interpreter joining us virtually, and we do have headsets available if you need that interpretation. We also have we'll not send a minute here. We also have a transcriber who will be translating or transcribing every meeting. So please, like I'm trying to, speak slowly and clearly so that we can get your name and your testimony on record. So thank you. Will the interpreters please, in attendance, please introduce yourselves, please. Yes, up here.
Good morning. I'm the interpreter. Soy la intérprete. ¿Alguien ocupa una interpretación al español? Thank you. Have a nice meeting.
Gracias. Thank you. In Navajo. I'm Navajo myself, so thank you. At this time, we will introduce ourselves. Like I said, I am Derek Watchman. I come to you from Window Rock, Arizona, and I am the Democratic appointee to the commission from Apache County up north.
Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to see many of you again. Thank you for your which one's not working? Okay, sorry. Hello, everybody. Wonderful to see so many familiar faces. We appreciate your passionate commitment to the democratic process. My name is Erica Newberg, and I am the independent chairwoman, and I live in Chandler.
Hello, I'm David Meal. I was appointed by the Republicans, and I am a Pima County, and really welcome all of you today, and we really need and appreciate your input. Thank you.
And for those of you that have been following us, some of us have been joining by WebEx, and so I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Lerner.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shireen Lerner. I'm one of the Democratic appointees from Maricopa County. Sorry I can't be with you today, but I look forward to hearing all of your comments. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for joining us, Commissioner Lerner. Appreciate it. At this time, we will now move to agenda item number 2, and that is a presentation on the process. So first, we'll hear from the representatives from our legal team.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Spencer from Snell Wilmer. I serve as outside counsel to the commission. With me is Sean Summers from Ballard Spar, and I'm going to give you a little intro on the law and some of the mechanics of the commission, and then I'll turn it over to our great mapping consultants. The basis for us being here stems from the federal Constitution. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the Constitution is the enumeration clause or the census clause and requires that the population be enumerated every 10 years. Of course, left out of that snippet up there is the 3/5 clause. Luckily, that was overridden by the 14th Amendment, which specified that the whole number of persons must be counted. From there, Congress layered on a few statutes that governed when the redistricting data was to be provided to the states. It was late this year. By December 31 of last year, the states were supposed to get their apportionment numbers as to which states would lose or gain congressional seats. That didn't come out till late March, early April, so 3-4 months late. And we were supposed to get the redistricting data by March 31st of this year, but instead we're getting it this week on April 12th. That was primarily due to the Census Bureau's difficulty in collecting the data in the field due to COVID-19. They were delayed 2 to 3 months in their door-to-door collection efforts. Add on top of that wildfires, hurricanes, and the statutes were missed. But that's the runway behind us, and we begin in earnest very soon here. I think next slide. So here at the state level, we've got our job to do. For most of statehood, it was performed like what occurs in other states. The lines were drawn by our legislature, but a constitutional initiative passed Prop 106 in the year 2000, creating this commission. You see the ballot title on your screen over here to my left, your right, that provides a preference towards fair maps and balanced and competitive redistricting. We'll go through the criteria in the Constitution itself in just 1 second. We were constituted prior to February 28th. That was the deadline in the Constitution, but our legislative leaders got done early, thankfully. We've been up and running for several months now, getting our ducks in a row, and we're ready to hit the ground running next week. So 5 members of the commission, you've met 4 today. Commissioner York is our 5th commissioner. There are requirements in the Constitution for political party balance and for geographic balance. You can see the names of our commissioners over here, what counties they come from. And the 4 commissioners elected, Chairwoman Newberg is our great independent chairwoman. So here's the most important part, this next screen here. These are the 6 criteria specified in the Arizona Constitution that the commission is charged with balancing. First, the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. Population equality. We are charged with achieving that goal for both the legislative and the congressional maps, but under the federal Constitution, we've got a little less leeway when it comes to the congressional maps and a little more leeway for the legislative maps. Of course, we try to minimize those differences to the degree possible. We've got to make these compact as possible, contiguous. Compactness is the tightness of the lines, reducing the total mileage of the circumference of the districts that we'll create. They've got to be connected, preferably tight connections, not loose ones. And here, we're really here to focus today on item D, which is respecting communities of interest to the extent practicable. As you'll hear more in a moment, we want to understand what the communities of interest are. And you'll hear a good definition in a moment as well. We can't make that perfect, but our goal is to first gather the information about what communities of interest exist, and then the commission can do its best to respect those to the degree possible. Probably can't make everybody happy, but the commissioners are going to do their best. And then we have to use geographic boundaries, whether that's man-made or existing geography. And then competitiveness is something that must be considered as well, as long as it doesn't create a significant detriment to the other goals. In other words, it's a mandatory consideration, and if it doesn't harm the other 5 goals, then we have to make it more competitive. If it will harm one of the other 5 goals, we must refrain from making that district a little more competitive. But overall, this is a balancing act, and this is our guide star in Section 14. Our timeline has been set, it's been voted on, and I think we're on track. You're here in, I think this is the penultimate meeting on our Communities of Interest listening tour. Next Thursday, the Census Bureau will announce and provide the redistricting data. We call that the PL 94-171 data. They bumped it up by 4 days in a press release last week. Our mapping team and their consultants will take a few weeks to crunch all those numbers, so it's not like we're going to be able to put pen to paper on August 13th, so give us a little bit of time. In September, this is where we'll draw our grid map. This is a requirement of the Constitution to wipe the existing congressional and legislative lines away and start with a fresh grid map. It's not going to look like squares and rectangles, but it will have population equality, and those 9 congressional districts and 30 legislative districts will all be contiguous, but it's not going to make any sense. But that's the starting point that the drafters required us to begin at. September and October is when we begin to put out some draft maps for your consideration. October, November is when we take the official public comment, and our aspiration is to continue the final, is to end the map drawing by the end of the year. It potentially could spill into January, but this is our goal, to get this done by the end of the calendar year, and your input is critical in all of those steps. You have numerous opportunities to provide that input. First, we meet every Tuesday, no matter what. It wouldn't surprise me if we increase the frequency of our normal meetings. You can provide input during those meetings or in between the meetings, and I assure you the commissioners read and incorporate all of those comments. You're here today in conjunction with the middle premise there, which is to provide input on communities of interest. It doesn't have to end today, but today's an important information gathering session. And then finally, when we put the draft maps out, let us know what you think. Show up to our meetings, email us, tweet at us, submit them through the website. We read it all. that's all from my part, and I think Mark or Ivy, you're up next, or Commissioner Watchman, do you want to kick it over?
Thank you, Eric. Let's go to Mark and Ivy. So here we go.
Good morning, everyone. You guys hear me in the back? Yeah. Yes, no, maybe so? There you go. All right. So today we want to talk about some of the tools that we built for you guys. There's three things that we're going to talk about. The first is a social economic report. That is an interactive website on the web today. You can find it at the IRC's website, a link there. And that provides you with 14 different demographic points for the entire state of Arizona. And we'll talk about it in a future slide in a second. The second piece that we're going to talk about is the Community of Interest Survey, which actually allows you to draw your own community of interest on a map. And then the third tool that we have is our redistricting system. That's currently being spun up right now, but it will allow you to draw and submit proposed map changes. So that's in the future coming. So the first thing that we want to talk about today is a socioeconomic report. Like I said, it's an interactive website. There's a screen capture on the right side of the screen. It gives you 14 different demographic points, which are all listed on the screen there right now. And again, it is for the entire state of Arizona. You see an acronym CVAP, that is Citizen Voting Age Population. Second tool that we mentioned was the Community of Interest Survey. You might have seen a QR code sitting on the desk when you walked in today. That would allow you to scan it with your phone and go directly to the site. It is mobile friendly. It is available 24/7, so you could fill it out on your phone. But if you have not filled out a Community of Interest survey, I encourage you to go home tonight and fill it out. You notice on the right side of the screen, there's a community boundary map. So that actually allows you to have drawing tools to give us the exact boundaries of your community of interest. And drawing your boundaries is really important, because that way we can accurately represent exactly your community of interest than trying to interpret the words that you give us today in your testimony. So I highly encourage you to go ahead and do that. If you've already filled out a community of interest and you are going to speak today, let me know when you come up and I can actually pull up your community of interest boundaries and we can show it on the screen. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ivy to actually talk about what is a community of interest.
Good morning. So, what is a community of interest?
It's the smaller mic that's loud for us.
This is the one that's in the room.
The one on your right.
Got it. Thank you. Let's start again. The reason we are here today, the primary reason, is to discuss communities of interest. And I ask, what is a community of interest? It is a geographic area of people who share a common story or connection. That connection can be common social interests, shared demographic characteristics, similar impacts from a legislative and/or congressional issue, or any other connection that leads people in a given area to believe they would benefit from being kept together, united in one legislative or congressional district. As you think about your community, think about the various demographic points or factors that Mark has mentioned, which is all in the community, which is all in the socioeconomic report. And the community survey, which Mark also alluded to, says, think about your neighbors. Do you have similar jobs? Do you rely on similar public services? Belong to the same neighborhood associations? Are you impacted by some regional environmental concern? Is your community defined by similar regional land use issues, transit concerns, languages spoken, celebrations or traditions, or other similar issues or characteristics. Any of these characteristics can define a community of interest. Now it is your turn. As they travel the state on this listening tour, the commissioners want to hear from you. What do you want the commissioners to consider as they draft and ultimately adopt their maps? How do you define your communities of interest? Using the online tools that Mark has described, and in your testimony today, we want to hear what brings your community of interest together and what are its geographic boundaries. Remember, the commissioners can incorporate your community into their maps only if you let us know where your community boundaries are on the map. Thank you for being here today. Now I will turn this back over to the commissioner's staff to begin taking your comments.
Thank you. The first advisement is this is not a political event. Please do not distribute campaign materials or any other politically leaning materials in the hearing room. Citizens may only speak when recognized by the chair or the presiding officer of the meeting if the chair is absent or has otherwise delegated hearing administration authority. In compliance with Arizona's open meeting law, speakers should confine their statements to the issue on the posted agenda, which is before the commission. Speakers are also requested to limit their comments to approximately 3 minutes. Additionally, speakers are required to follow proper decorum. Speakers must use appropriate language. Foul and/or abusive language will not be tolerated. Any speaker failing to follow proper decorum or any other guidelines may be asked to leave. Any breach of the peace or disruption of a commission public hearing may be the cause of report to law enforcement, arrest, and prosecution. If someone if someone has expressed the same sentiment as you, you do not need to speak in order to have your comment recorded. As long as you have filled out the survey, your input will be received and considered by the commission. Everyone is welcome to speak, should you choose to do so. Opposing viewpoints may be expressed by the citizens present. As a courtesy, citizens are reminded to address their comments to the chair and the commission and not to the audience present. Please show respect for all speakers and avoid personal comments. Remember, the commission needs to hear all sides in order to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And now we will begin the public comment portion. Will staff read the names of the speaker and the folks that are in the queue? Just for everybody's information, we have roughly 50 people that have signed up, so we look forward to it. So will staff read the names in the queue?
Yes, Commissioner, Vice Chair, and all the commissioners, Chairwoman Newberg, and Chair Neal and Lerner, and the listening audience. I am going to be reading 4 names at a time. If I can have you all please either line up to the left side of the wall or to the right side and be prepared to speak. And I will please ask you again to hold off on your applause, although appreciate it. It does take time away from the speakers. So we will begin with the first 4 names. Janice Budach, Gail Hamers, and I do apologize if I mispronounce your name. Please say your name for us when you get to the podium. Shirley Muni, Maria Hidalgo. Those are the 4 names. Please sign up accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, let's check this mic. Are we okay? Yeah. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Independent Redistricting. Okay, say that 10 times. Redistricting Commission. Welcome to Pima County, and we're so glad that you coordinated this to have these listening sessions. I am Jan Budak. I live at Houghton Corridor, zip code 85748. I am the chair for LD 10, Precinct 181. I have taught 45 years, and of those 45, 25 in Tucson. I've taught private, Catholic, I've taught on Davis-Monthan. I've taught west on Silver Bell, Bricta, and I've taught downtown, south of Congress on 12th and 6th. I also am advocating for anti-trafficking, not-for-profit organizations, and those who are currently being rescued and/or in aftercare homes. So basically, in all of this, as you mentioned on slide 4, with the constitutional provisions of Article 4 and Part 2, Section 1, there are 6 constitutional goals for redistricting that the Commission is bound to use, and the voting rights is another consideration while determining the boundaries, which then leaves the areas that have changed either by population growth, economic expansion, land development, industry, and addition of private and public schools. As I was listening to yesterday's testimonies, it was obvious that the boundaries need to be changed. There are 2 really good speakers yesterday that stood out in my mind that would be very beneficial for researched and referenced documents. One of those being from the Pima County Republican Party GOP chair, and she had the best stats. I can't duplicate those. She has them. I have a copy here, and it's really well worth listening and looking at her information. The other party that spoke yesterday was a lady in white. She had her hair pulled back, and she gave her constituents that she was actually being affected by policies nefarious to her work and goals. To add to that train of thought, I would like to address the policies that affect public safety, which is part of my community. My community of teaching and my community where I live in that Houghton corridor. And while I was teaching, I experienced a lockdown because the shooter of a neighborhood. We also lost a beautiful 2nd grader because of home invasion. So I really have, as well as many of my constituents in my community, have developed a heightened level of public safety. We have a defunding the police, and it is not something that we really in our communities actually need. In fact, we need the opposite. So to change that policy, we would have to have our boundary lines changed so that we would have a voice in making determination for our governing body. Also, the communities of interest that are contained, I'm going to explain them very briefly. They're north, they form that backward C, and they go across the top Catalina foothills and to the Tanque Verde, then the boundary line on the Houghton corridor down, with Wilmot maybe being the east-west line for LD10, and then you have Sorita and Green Valley and those areas. That makes a backward C. Because we don't know what the population is or the census is, it's hard to kind of say what's going to be in that for population. But I do know that in that population, the community that could be totally affected economically would be by anybody coming in with a different, oh, wow, really? Holy mackerel. Okay, so thank you. I thought I was talking very quickly. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you listening, and you have a great day.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Shirley Muni, and I live at the northern edge of the city of Central Tucson. Since I was raised just outside of New York and lived in that city for a few years, and then lived just outside of Washington, D.C. for 35 years, Tucson seemed practically rural to me. I visited Tucson for about 10 years and then retired here almost 22 years ago, choosing to live in the city rather than further out. What's my community of interest? Well, since I moved here, I've been involved in civic activities, mostly nonpartisan. I've worked with people in my development and in organizations from the Central City, East and West Sides, young and old, and we're all of one community, and that's voters. Voters want qualified candidates who will represent their interests. whatever they may be. Most of all, they want their votes to be meaningful and not just symbolic. As you know, Arizona is presently divided about 1/3 Democratic, 1/3 Republican, and 1/3 independent. What turns a voter off? Feeling that his or her vote won't matter because it's from a Republican or Democratic district. So that's why I'm asking that the larger community of interest, voters, be represented not by a jigsaw puzzle of various communities of interest, but rather by a more competitive district, all more and more competitive districts. Every voter for state or federal offices should have a choice of positions and parties and not have the election effectively decided in a primary. Competition is the name of the game, and redistricting is the path to effective competition. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Gail Camaras. I'm a retired attorney. My husband and I chose to settle in Tucson and Pima County 15 years ago after RVing all over the country. We chose it and southern Arizona because of the combination of rural beauty and urban amenities, along with the weather, appealed to us. Tucson offered theater, restaurants, libraries, and medical facilities, while the surrounding area offered hiking in the cool of the mountains. We found the area to be a real community of caring, churches and local nonprofits that reached out to those in need, neighbors helping neighbors. We gladly became part of that community. A few months ago, I received a copy of a report from the Center for the Future of Arizona, summarizing a 2020 Gallup Arizona survey. It showed a remarkable agreement among Arizonans of the values that they hold that is not reflected in our current political representation. According to the report, some 70% or more of Arizonans agree on these values. The need for a highly educated and skilled population, affordable and accessible health care, including mental health care, good paying jobs and opportunity, sustainable practices to protect our air, land, and water, civic engagement that solves problems, and democracy that works for all, and fair, just, and equitable treatment of all people. To further these ends, I ask that the Commission be cognizant of the shifting dynamics in Arizona, and particularly in southern Arizona, and work diligently to create maps that create the competitive districts our people want and need, and to comply with both the letter and the spirit of the law that the people created in establishing the Independent Redistricting Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Maria Hidalgo, if I can have the next four people lined up. Misty Atkins, Nathan Davis, John Emery, Karen Harris.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen of the IRC. My name is Maria Hidalgo. I relocated from New Mexico to Tucson in 2017. My husband and I chose our residence based on the location of the beautiful Catalina foothills. Our home is near the intersection of Cobe and Sunrise, with access 8 miles east, 8 miles west, 8 miles south of all of the needs and amenities which have enhanced our life in retirement. Our parish, St. Thomas the Apostle, is only 6 miles from our home. Our immediate community has a notable population of folks 55 or older, mostly retirees. Easy access to all of the public lands along the foothills has allowed us to engage with others who not only respect, value, and support the use of conservation of our public lands, but also believe in protecting our precious environment. The thousands of us who live technically in Pima County still use many of the benefits Tucson has to offer. We in the foothills don't have a university. We don't have an airport or an Air Force base. We don't have hospitals. We don't have our own water, gas, internet, or cable systems. We don't have our own public library systems. The museums, the performing arts centers, the symphony, the opera are in Tucson. All three political parties recognized by the Secretary of State have offices in Tucson. Don't be misinformed. Tucson is an integral part of all of the communities of interest in Pima County. Arizona's decision 20 years ago to pass Proposition 106 by 12% created you folks, the IRC. That is an astounding accomplishment. I've come to know that the essentials to having a healthy democracy is to create electoral maps that are competitive. First and foremost, competition is an American value. Our Constitution was designed to allow voters to elect their candidates and not intended for candidates to cherry pick their constituents. Arizona's map currently reflects an electoral map that is made up of a third Democrats, a third independents, and a third Republicans. And most importantly, competitiveness protects us all from extremism. It compels candidates to appeal to more diverse and inclusive electorate. I appreciate your attention, and most importantly, for the work you're going to do to ensure that Arizona's electoral maps reflects not only all of its diverse populations, but most importantly, the actual makeup of the voters. I thank you.
Misty Atkins.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. My name is Misty Atkins, and I live in Oro Valley. My husband and I are lucky enough to have landed here only 2 years ago, so my community of interest is still fairly small. Of course, the town of Oro Valley is part of my community where I do most of my shopping, dining, and socializing. To the north, Oro Valley Hospital and the medical offices next to it are where I receive health care. I volunteer at the food bank in Catalina, and I play softball at Saddlebrook. Both of these places are a part of my regular week. I spend time shopping and dining along Thornydale to the west. I like to think of the loop bike path as my own, all the way down to Brandy Fenton Park and across the Rito. I share in similar environmental concerns, educational ideals, and political views of many of my friends in this area. My current legislative district already includes most of what I consider my community. What I would like to ask, though, is that my legislative district be more competitive. I believe a district that has a nearly equal chance of electing a candidate from either party could foster more and better candidates who really need to listen to more than just their base in order to be elected. Running for office takes enormous time, energy, and money, so why should someone bother to run if their district consistently goes to the other party? Legislators would be more likely to compromise, finding something that benefits everyone. Candidates will be less extreme. With competitive districts, voters in turn will be more likely to fill out a ballot when they feel like the person they are supporting has a real chance of winning. It gives all voters a real voice. These are things that foster a thriving democracy. My Arizona Congressional District is a good example of how maps can really work. Our rep knows that he must listen to all of his constituents if he is to win re-election, and he cannot take an extreme position without alienating too many of the voters in his district. I understand that not all districts can be competitive, but the vast majority can be, and verifying them with a program like Plan Score or something else that we've seen to reliably test whether or not a legislative district is competitive will validate the maps that you build. So I'm requesting that you keep my Oro Valley community intact and that you combine it in a way to make it and other legislative districts competitive for the good of our greater community, the great state of Arizona. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Before we go to the next speaker, and this is up for either a response with the previous speaker or future ones, we're hearing about the importance and value of competitiveness. We're hearing everything that you're saying. I have a follow-up question because we do have constitutional criteria that we're required to follow. Are there specific communities of interest that would be harmed by not having competitive districts? If so, that's important data and information to share with us. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I don't know who to address, but I submitted a map this morning, if you'd like to pull that up under Nathan Davis. Ready? Okay.
Go ahead, proceed.
Thank you. My name is Nathan Davis. I'm an educator and small business owner. Other than a few years when I lived in DC for grad school, I am a born and bred Tucsonan, and I've lived on the northwest side my whole life. My wife and I currently live in Casas Adobes, an ill-defined area west of the foothills. Like many residents of the Northwest, my wife and I call ourselves Tucsonans, despite not technically living in the city limits. My wife is a teacher at a TUSD school in South Tucson, and my business has showrooms in Marana and Catalina foothills. My church is in Oro Valley. My gun range is in Catalina. We shop at Sprouts in Oro Valley near our home, the Food City in the city limits in Flowing Wells, and the Safeway up the road in the county limits. My friends and family live in Oro Valley, Catalina, Dove Mountain, Marana, Tucson, Catfoot, Tanque Verde, Vail, Green Valley, and Sahuarita. My community of interest is not so much rooted in geography as it is values. I have submitted a map which includes Casas Adobes, Catalina foothills, parts of northern Tucson, and southern Oro Valley. As you can see by the socioeconomic data, which I've given you, the region is not a monolith, as some would make it seem. It is a diverse region, as is Pima County, as is our state. It includes Flowing Wells Unified School District, Tucson Unified School District, Catfoot, and Amphi USD, Pima Community College, Northwest Medical Center, La Encantada, the Foothills Mall, the Tucson Mall. We want compact, competitive districts, like we already have. Currently, Pima County is awash in competitive districts. LD4 recently elected both a Republican and a Democrat to the State House. LD10 had a Republican representative as recently as 2018. Candidates outside of both groups from both parties poured massive amounts of money into the races in LDs 9, 10, and 11 last cycle. Yesterday and today, you've heard people say they want something called a foothills corridor. I have a map towards the end of what that looks like, based on what they've said. Additionally, I've printed out Texas's 35th and Ohio's 4th congressional districts. Can anyone honestly say that the proposed foothills corridor is any less gerrymandered than those two districts out east? Tucson, both a city and the metro area, is an amazing and diverse region with wonderful communities. Currently, the way it's divided ensures that our elected officials have a stake in both the city and outlying regions, as it should be. I'm here to ask you to follow all 6 requirements and not ignore the mandate to create competitive districts. Give all voters, not just partisans, primary voters, the opportunity to select individuals that represent their interests. And to speak to what the outside counsel said earlier, create no significant detriment. I would really like to emphasize significant detriment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker, John Emery, Karen Harris, Dana Hoffman, Marion Craner.
As the next speaker comes up, I just want to remind everyone of one of the biggest challenges we have as a commission, and that is the pure population numbers. In 2010, a legislative district needed about 210,000 people to create a district. With the census estimates, we don't know the exact number yet, each legislative district will need to have over 240,000 people. On the congressional districts in 2010, each congressional district had about 710,000 people in 2010. And we will now be drawing congressional districts that need to have over 800,000 people in a congressional district. So as you look at your communities of interest, our challenge is who do we combine? How do we combine things to create districts that meet these population guidelines? Thank you.
My name is John Emery. I reside in Quail Creek in a retirement community on the edge of Sahuarita and Green Valley. I'm a retired veterinarian, and like many in my community, I'm a veteran. I grew up in rural Nebraska, and I moved to Arizona in 2006 from a rural area in California to escape the liberal environment and taxes that, quite frankly, were making retirement not a pretty picture for me. I was happy with my relocation until the 2010 redistricting. At one time, we had representatives that listened to us and voted our interests. That ended with redistricting. We lost all that to Nogales and South Tucson, which now controls our legislative district. I feel our conservative values are being ignored and destroyed in the current legislative District 2. I'm concerned Arizona will turn into another California if we do not correct the injustices that were done in the 2010 redistricting. My community has nothing in common with Nogales and South Tucson. Our values, interests, and needs are very different. We have much more in common with Corona del Tucson, Vail, Marana, Oro Valley, Sonoyta, and Benson. These communities would be a much better fit with my community. So I am requesting that we move out of a community that we have nothing in common with to some community that we do have something in common with. Thank you. And thank you for the job you do.
Thank you.
Thank you to the commissioners for having us here to speak today. I can't stress enough how important it is to have an independent and unbiased commission. Thank you. My name is Karen Harris. My husband and I have lived in Tucson for nearly 5 years. Before that, we lived in North Carolina for 25, so that was a big change for us. Our current community in Casa Adobe is an unincorporated part of Pima County. It's convenient to the mountains, the beautiful parks, Oro Valley, Eastern Foothills, and downtown Tucson. All of this and its diversity is what attracted us to Tucson. We acknowledge the tremendous importance of supporting our public schools, the value of diversity, the need to protect our fragile environment, and respect for all religions. I vote in CD2 and LD9. CD2 and LD9 are divided in nearly into thirds, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. I serve as a precinct committee person in my precinct. We are proud of the competitive nature of our district and would like to recommend no changes. In comparison, because I live just 2 blocks south of LD11, our neighbors just to the north of us, on the other hand, are very non-competitive. And I just looking at the map and at the far reaches of LD11 map gives us a clue of how difficult it is to have competitive races when one party is being favored over another. Over the last few years, we have witnessed the result of highly biased, almost radical policymaking entering into our government instead of moderate candidates who are willing to focus on the entirety of their districts, the urban, rural, the cultural, and the income differences. These are important considerations, and compromises must be made to serve all of our Arizona citizens. More and more, we are witnessing representatives in these non-competitive districts that cut themselves off from their constituents and cater to one specific group of people, religion, or even corporations. I respectfully say that we've had enough of the increasing polarization. This is a danger, and it's alarming. It's time to consider communities over greed and to consider the equal voting rights of all citizens, regardless of color, religion, rural or versus urban residency. This is what our democracy is founded on. I appeal to the IRC to support competitive voting districts as ruled by our Arizona Supreme Court. Our state is divided into thirds, as mentioned before, and no district should be considered safe. And thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Good morning. Let me first express my thanks to the Commission for the work that you are doing. It's an invaluable public service that you're performing. I really appreciate the independence of the Commission and how that independence is core to its mission. My name is Dana Offerman. My husband and I have resided in Oro Valley for about 10 years. I retired from higher education. I volunteer in my community with Literacy Connects and with various citizen referendum and initiatives. My community in Oro Valley is very fortunate. We live in the shadows of Catalina State Park. We enjoy and we want to protect our beautiful environment, support our public schools and our public parks, and relish the recreational and cultural activities in our area. I vote in Congressional District 1 and Legislative District 11, so I would like to speak to the Commission about my experience as a voter in these two districts. I think that CD1 is a very competitive district, and I really appreciate that. My experience as a voter with a representative that I have in CD1 is that we have a congressional representative who actively engages with all constituents, who listens to us and who is responsive to all of us, not just those in his or her party. In a competitive district, office holders must be moderate in their positions and work toward bipartisan solutions and bipartisan legislation. I am a moderate. I think it is the best way forward for our democracy and for meeting the challenges of our country for candidates and office holders to have to listen and to engage with all constituents. I think competition in districts helps to combat polarization and divisiveness in the political process. I would like my CD to remain competitive. However, I am also a voter in LD11, and I don't think it is a very competitive district. And this to me is in stark contrast to my experience as a voter in CD1. I find that the absence of competitive races for the Arizona legislature results in representatives who do not actively engage with all constituents, but will only listen to their party faithful. I don't think this is productive, and as a voter, I resent that they think they don't need to listen to me. Instead, they appeal to a small subset of their parties because it is their belief that they don't have to listen to moderates or independents. So my community of interest is around competitive districts. I do not want to have to vote in a district that is safe for either party. I want candidates to appeal to voters across the political spectrum. Moderates and independents from both parties would benefit from this, and our governmental processes would be healthier, less polarized, and less divisive. Independent voters deserve a voice too. They are nearly a third. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also voting in favor, the next four speakers are Constance Aguiline, Catherine Babcock, Brian Becker, and Alyssa Westbrook.
I thank you, Chairwoman and Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak. The community that I have identified would cross county boundaries. I noticed in the last meeting, the first grid is going to go by boundaries, but this would be one that would cross boundaries. So specifically, I'm interested in including all of Santa Cruz County, along with Green Valley and Sahuarita. I wrote up some lines, but that's okay. So our community is tied together by our very rich environment, the Santa Rita and Patagonia Mountains, the Santa Cruz River Valley, and our dark skies. We are linked by a common aquifer. This unique biodiverse ecosystem attracts many visitors and residents, and our economy is dependent on it. We need to protect this habitat, including the waters. We're a world-class tourist destination for birders, hikers, astronomers, and those seeking healthful living and natural beauty, which is what brought me. When I first moved to Green Valley, where I live, I met my next door neighbor who told us that they had traveled the whole world birding and chose Green Valley for the birding. They could do it from home. There are at least 3 hiking clubs in Green Valley and Sahuarita with hundreds of members. Right now, our community of interest, Santa Cruz County and Green Valley, share Arizona legislative representatives across county lines, but our federal congressional representative is divided by the county line. I believe our community will be best served by common representation that crosses the county lines. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Babcock, and I am living in Green Valley, and I am speaking as the previous speaker did of my interest in going across county lines, Santa Cruz County, the town of Sahuarita, and Green Valley as a community of interest. And when I look at what binds the citizens in this area, since moving here in 2005, my sense of community has been enhanced and really clarified by the visitors who come from across the country to spend time with me in this area. And when I look at what attracts them, the bottom line is the environment. Science lovers come for the Whipple Observatory and for our dark skies, which we are trying to protect. The bird watchers join hundreds of locals to join in the annual bird count and add to their life list of species that they don't see anywhere else in the world. Interest in our unique wildlife draws others, and that includes the kind of wildlife that they don't see anywhere else. Javelinas in our neighborhood, in my neighborhood in the morning, bobcats, roadrunners, quail. A lot of my friends this is a magnet for them to visit this unique area for these experiences. Hikers come to experience the high altitude sky islands. The bottom line is the bottom line, and that is that policies that respect our environment as a treasure can bring in tourist dollars to support our economy. The final point I would like to make, and it has to do with another issue binding these areas of Santa Cruz County, Green Valley, and Sahuarita, is water. The increasing scarcity of water, our need to protect our aquifer, which we share, and to unite to face the shortages that are looming in the future. I believe these are
These are two very important things that bind our communities together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa Thompson, Aguilar, Brian Brecker, Melissa Westbrook. Please announce your name.
Chair Newberg, commissioners, staff. My name is Brian Bickle. I live in Catalina Foothills. I've been a resident this time of Pima County since 2013, Arizona since 2009, and previously resided here from 1970 to 1976. I've seen changes in my absence and my return. Listening to the speakers yesterday and the speakers today, the communities of interest that they feel don't represent them, I think, are of little concern, my opinion. To address your question, Commissioner Newberg, what communities of interest would be benefited or harmed by the presence or lack of competitive districts? And I posit that all of them would be harmed by the absence of competitive districts. I would gladly give up my party's representation in my legislative district if it would mean that I was no longer a member of the minority party in the legislature in Phoenix. When we came back to Arizona in 2009, the party of the majority not only had a majority, but a supermajority in both the House and the Senate. After redistricting in 2010, we still had the same majority, but we currently have a Senate that is 16-14, a House that is 31-29, and a congressional district that is 5-4. Balanced, competitive, and the difference in governance with competitive districts and a balanced legislature, both at the federal and at the state level, has benefited everybody in the state of Arizona, my community of interest, and more so Southern Arizona. One of the efforts as part of the redistricting process is to try and put a third congressional district on the border. The only way you're going to do that is to run up a district up one side of the state or the other. And the last thing you need is somebody trying to represent border districts that lives in the Santan Valley. I would posit that the two congressional representatives we have now both live within the city of Tucson. And if you don't live on the border, and when I say live on the border, I mean Douglas, Bisbee, Nogales, Yuma, San Luis, you don't understand the border. My wife is a native Arizonan. She's lived on the border all of her life. We lived on the border when we first moved back here. I had immigrant traffic across my property. I know what the border is. You don't understand the border by going to visit it occasionally. Commissioner Meals' comments about sheer numbers. If you look at it from a sheer numbers perspective, 21 of the 30 districts, legislative districts, based on pure numbers, would be totally within Maricopa, Pinal, and Pima County. The other 9 can fill up the other 12 counties. So having somebody that's your representative in your backyard based on population is going to be virtually impossible. 7.5 of the 9 congressional districts would be in those same 3 majority populated counties. From 2010 to 2020, Greenlee County lost 1,000 people. Maricopa County picked up 81,000 in a year.
Good morning. Welcome to my fellow early birds. My name is Marion Craner, and I'm a resident of Tucson's East Side, 85730. I'm a graduate of the University of Arizona with a double degree in elementary and secondary phys ed and a minor in special ed. I have a master's degree in student personnel services, and I've taught at all levels in the public schools for 35 years. I want to thank those that serve on the redistricting committee. I want to say thank you for this chance to share my heartfelt opinions. As an independent, I want fair and competitive districts that reflect the natural boundaries of communities. I believe every vote should have equal power, and neither party should be able to gerrymander voting districts. Oppressed people need to have movements and signs to say that which should be obvious. Those with power are bent on maintaining it, leaving no room for the historically marginalized. Be for justice. Please make your decisions so that you are on the right side of history, not on those who seek to oppress for their own aggrandizement. I believe redistricting should be fairly determined between all political parties. I will continue to thank my community of Tucson by volunteering for the Girl Scouts of Southern Arizona. I want to thank everyone who buys Girl Scout cookies. I want to thank the Tucson Fire Department, the Police Department, and all first responders. In conclusion, I believe every vote should have equal power, and neither party should be able to get an unfair advantage from manipulating voting districts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Got to use both.
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Melissa Westbrook. I am a daughter of Douglas. I was raised there, and I graduated from the University of Arizona, moved away for 40 years, and came back. I'm a public education advocate. While I was in Washington State, I had a blog that was the most popular public education blog in the state. In thinking of communities of interest, Douglas is one of them. Isolated, rural. You know, who speaks for them? Where are their abilities? And I hope you think of this as you make your decisions. We're in a position to unite the division in our country. I was quite shocked when an earlier speaker said they had nothing in common with people in Nogales and South Tucson. I could tell you 10 things right now, and one thing we have in common, we're American citizens, and we should think about how we unite ourselves. Under the Constitution, we are all equal. Equality is not the same thing as equity. There are people in this room that have lived lives that were not equitable to the rest of us. That is another key value that I hope you bring to your work. I also think that you have a chance to provide a model for other government entities. This is how we unite people. This is the example of fairness. And I hope as you do your work that you remember that compromise and consensus should be the order of the day in order to to craft the most comprehensive and competitive districts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next four speakers, we do have 53 speakers. So the next four speakers, Lou Sampson, Thomas Campbell, Ted Maxwell, Bob Abel. If you'll please announce your names as you get up to the podium.
Hi, my name is Mary Lou Sampson, and I have lived in the lovely retirement area of Green Valley for over 30 years, and I'm retired. I have seen many changes over the years with the growth in our area, especially in Sahuarita. It's now got a couple of retirement areas of its own, and we share so much with Sahuarita because we have the Chamber of Commerce we share, shopping, the schools at which many of us volunteer. We enjoy watching our young people in their local sports. We also share parks, recreation, and wonderful restaurants. It's inexplicable to me that one retirement community and other parts of Sahuarita were sliced and diced out of our area during the last redistricting to be placed in a district north of them, which many of them can't even drive at night or are afraid to drive in the traffic, so they can't go to the meetings. It just didn't make sense to most of us. And it's confusing to try to explain to newcomers who are registering to vote exactly where the boundary lines are and how far they are away from their neighbors and people that they know. The past gerrymandering of our districts has made many of our voices irrelevant because we are not represented in either state or federal elections, and we haven't been for quite a while. It's sad to say that many of us no longer have faith or trust in our government to do what's best for us. It seems much of this is done to discourage citizens from actively participating in our form of government. Being a part of my community is huge, and many of us want it back. Thank you for holding these hearings so we could publicly express our views.
Thank you.
Hello, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talking. I'm not going to repeat everything that people said about competitiveness. I am a retired attorney and school teacher. I practiced law for 20 years and taught overseas international schools for 18, living in Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Bangladesh and Laos and Shanghai and Istanbul and finally in Taiwan. I've learned to appreciate by observation the importance it is for us to have a fair system, because many places do not. Now, when we talk about communities of interest, I want to share with you the joy that I experienced when we moved to Tucson a year and a half ago. We were welcomed into the Fort Lowell historical neighborhood. Tucson is divided up into a whole bunch of neighborhoods, we found out. I don't know how many of those have associations that are as active as the one that I'm in. But we clean up the Alamo Wash. We go work on the park, Fort Lowell Park. We have a group that helps old people can be able to live at home, a live at home program. And so there is this idea of neighborhood throughout Tucson. So when you're chopping up Tucson, which you're going to have to do, just think about those neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Ted Maxwell. Madam Chair, Commissioners, good morning. I am Major General, retired, Ted Maxwell, former commander of the Arizona Air National Guard and currently the president and CEO of the Southern Arizona Leadership Council. SALC is a nonpartisan public policy organization with over 140 CEOs, business, and community leaders. We believe that in 2011, the redistricting negatively impacted the representation of the citizens of Pima County at large. Pima County is the second largest county in the state and contains numerous communities of interest, as you have heard. Politically, the region is nearly divided in thirds, yet Pima County does not have a true representatives at the state legislature from both parties. This has impacted the region's ability to engage at the state level. SALC works closely with members from both parties, yet when we have legislative bills of interest, we have been forced to go outside of Pima County to find sponsors to carry our bills of the majority party. As a region as large as Pima County with more than 1 million citizens, we should have geographic districts solely within Pima County representing both parties. Yesterday, you heard about the possibility of a northern and eastern district. One, little close to the military connection that I have, exists on the south side of Pima County, and that's the Southern Arizona Defense Sector. In the south of Pima County, you have Raytheon Missile Systems, the 162nd Air National Guard Wing, my former wing, which is one of the largest wings in the nation, and Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. Most of the men and women who serve or work at these organizations are voters and are Arizona citizens. Many of the employees and service members, men and women, live in communities such as Sarita, Rita Ranch, Corona de Tucson. These communities, when combined with Green Valley, which has a large military retiree presence, would make for a district of like-minded people looking for representation at the state level, which they currently don't have. The possibility of the two districts you've heard about, when paired with the predominant Democratic districts, which will continue to exist from the west side of Pima County, as well as the city of Tucson, this would give our region representation from both parties at the state level. A true picture of the homogeneity of Pima County and the diversity that we truly do have, much like prior to 2011. So considerations of communities of interest, when combined with geographic boundaries, to me, are the best and the most important representation of Pima County you can get. Congressional maps should also form that regionality and communities of interest. The ultimate goal, though, is to provide maps that not only meet your statutory requirements, but also result in the majority of the citizens of Arizona feeling like they truly and logically have their interest represented by their elected officials. It's not an easy task, and I want to thank you all for your service on this critical piece of this process. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
The next one speaking after Bob Abel is Adelita Sharilla. I'm sorry for that. Angie Anderson, Barbara Tellman.
And before we move to the next speaker, that last gentleman, I want to make sure that he submitted a map. We have not heard that much substantive feedback about our military bases as it relates to congressional districts, legislative districts, and empowering these communities. And so some of that substantive information, and it doesn't have to be right now, but it's incredibly helpful information, and I encourage you to continue forwarding what we need to learn and think about.
Hi, my name's Bob Abel, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to participate in this process. I moved to Tucson in 1973 from Oklahoma. The population of Tucson was about 260,000, and it still had a genuine sense of place. From the moment I got here, I felt like I belonged in the beautiful Sonoran Desert. I've never been a fan of city life and politics. So soon after I married my wife, Virginia, we moved out of town. We've lived in Rancho del Cerro subdivision for 35 years. Most of the amenities that support our lifestyle are in Marana and Oro Valley, not the city of Tucson. Everything we need is between Silver Bell Road and Oracle Road, west to east, and between Flowing Wells Road and Ina Road, south to north. Our property borders the Sweetwater Preserve, so we have easy access to hiking and biking trails. We enjoy an abundant wildlife and plant species in our subdivision. It is a very safe, peaceful, environmentally friendly place to live. Lack of street lights enhances our ability to view the night sky with clarity. And our single-acre lots have septic systems. We pay for our own trash removal. The county takes care of our roads. However, Tucson Water supplies our drinking water. About the only time we go through Tucson is to take I-10 to the airport. My wife and I were school teachers in Marana and Flowing Wells. Unfortunately, families in our community have to bus their kids to TUSD schools. We would prefer to have our property taxes going to Marana and Flowing Wells. In my opinion, the last redistricting map violated the Voting Rights Act by not respecting communities of interest. Our neighborhood is not equitably represented with dissimilar communities in LD3. The previous commissions seemed to be too focused on competitiveness. When districts are too competitive, nearly half of the population is bound to feel underrepresented. Furthermore, the previous maps that were drawn did not have equal population. This inequality must be rectified. In conclusion, because we are outside the city limits, we cannot vote on initiatives and candidates that are supposed to be representing our community. This is another violation of the Voting Rights Act. We cannot even get our candidate on the ballot to oppose an 18-year incumbent that cares more about the inner city in South Tucson than communities to the north and east. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. My name is Adelita Grijalva. I live in Congressional District 3, Pima County Supervisory District 5, Legislative District 3, and a third-generation Arizona native. I also live in unincorporated Pima County with both Pascuayaqui and Tohono O'odham nations very close by. I am here as a representative of the Southern Arizona Latino Coalition to speak to the Voting Rights Act and the Latino community representation in Southern Arizona. The Latino Coalition in Southern Arizona was led at the last redistricting by our friend Richard Elias, who has sadly passed away. I am proud to continue this advocacy for our community today. Yesterday was the 56th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, and at a time when participation in our national and local elections have never been more critical, the Southern Arizona Latino Coalition continues to be committed to inclusion and representation for the Latino community and other protected classes. The coalition is a collective of local Latino leaders, inclusive of community, neighborhood, business, grassroots activists with decades of service to our community. We have joined together again and seek to engage the Commission for the interests of Pima County and Southern Arizona Latino communities. I'm here to speak for the legal need under the Voting Rights Act to protect both of Arizona Justice Department approved and designated Hispanic voting rights districts. One voting rights district is located in the Phoenix area, Maricopa County, and one is currently divided between all of Santa Cruz County and parts of Pima, Yuma, and Maricopa counties. It is this second district that I'm primarily referencing today. The majority of the Southern Arizona district comes from the west, south, and central areas of Tucson and west and southwest rural areas of Pima County and all of Santa Cruz County. The Southern Arizona district includes Pascuayaqui and Tohono O'odham nations in Pima County. This district includes portions of the Tucson Mountains and Ironwood Forest. The border of this voting rights district goes west to include the border of communities of San Luis, Somerton, and the southern portion of Yuma, all representing overwhelmingly Latino populations. As a member of the Tucson Unified School District's governing board and a Pima County supervisor, I proudly represent the school districts of both Sunnyside and Tucson Unified. There's no rationale to splitting these districts and communities because we're tied together through social, economic, physical proximity, and cultural connection. The Latino population in Southern Arizona is a historic reality, beginning with the inclusion of Southern Arizona in the Arizona Territory on December 30th, 1853 through the Gadsden Purchase. The Latino population has grown significantly since the last census. As we await current data from the U.S. Census Bureau, which I understand might be delayed and is delayed again, complicates this process the Commission is undertaking, and I appreciate that is complicated. We want to begin to make our case for this Hispanic voting rights district's population to come from Southern Arizona. There are numerous ways to increase the Tucson-Pima County portion of the Latino population in this. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, excuse me. Could we give you another minute? Yeah, please come back. My fellow commissioners would like you to finish your statement, so please.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Let's see. We want to begin to make our case for this Hispanic voting rights district's population to come from Southern Arizona. There are numerous ways to increase the Tucson-Pima County portion of the Latino population in this district while maintaining the competitiveness of the crosstown and southern eastern Arizona district. We have a sister relationship with Santa Cruz County with shared values, language, family connections, and the connection with Yuma's Latino population is a commonality of our borderlands region. In addition to shared languages and extended our families, the public lands are unique shared attributes of this region. The coalition would appreciate the opportunity and commitment from the Commission through its chair to work with their Latino coalition to reaffirm Southern Arizona's Latino population and other protected populations, and the ability to elect a person of their choice from their community from Southern Arizona and its borderlands. In drafting maps, it must be understood that the voting rights districts must be protected to ensure Latino communities in Maricopa and Southern Arizona are able to continue to have real opportunity to elect a person of their choice. Southern Arizona should have a minimum of 2 districts, with the majority populations for both districts coming from our southern region and particularly from Pima County and Santa Cruz County, thus protecting the voting rights district in Southern Arizona. As a coalition, we'll be submitting an online map reflecting the points of articulated by the commission survey deadline. The coalition thanks the commission for your time and attention during these hearings. We do have concerns. At this point, the concerns focus on outreach and full public input. We are prepared to work with this commission on future outreach efforts within the geographic area that I've spoken of today.
I actually have a specific question.
Yes, sir.
If we need to increase population in your district, where would you suggest we go to find additional population?
Well, and I think that some of that would come, helpful information would come from the map, but I also think it's difficult to really pinpoint that without the accurate census data.
Okay.
That makes, I know, that makes your job very difficult.
Yeah, but we do look forward to your input on that, so we would appreciate
Absolutely.
that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. And with the importance of the voting, never been more critical, representation of all sectors of our state are urgent. Coalition is committed to Latino representation and their participation in selecting their representatives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. Thank you for holding these hearings. My name is Angie Anderson. I am here to give you information about my communities of interest. I urge you to use the criteria laid out in the Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, and encourage you to honor the Voting Rights Act to keep minority-majority districts together. Districts drawn in 2011 were not compact and were weighted too much on competitiveness. I live in Green Valley, zip code 85614, and a middle to upper middle income retirement community. My community has been without representation for 10 years because my community of interest was unlawfully, dishonestly, and deliberately excluded to include minority communities in South Tucson and Nogales, not in our community of interest. I would like to see my legislative district include Green Valley, and moving north and east to Sahuarita, sweep to Davis-Monthan, Vail, Corona de Tucson, and parts of Cochise County to include Fort Huachuca military, aviation, law enforcement communities. The bedroom community of Sahuarita was carved out in 2011 into 2 congressional districts, one of which is a retirement subdivision known as Rancho Resort. Parts of Tucson were also carved out in the middle of cosmopolitan areas such as the University of Arizona. I want to see the new congressional district as a sweep going east and north to include Green Valley, Corona de Tucson, Vail, Tanque Verde Valley, rounded up to Oro Valley and Saddlebrook north to Pinal County. As a taxpayer and citizen, I urge you all to work together for the best outcome, as your decisions will have impact the next 10 years. In God we trust. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speakers are Rick Tillman and Christine Ashley and Shelley Harris, and then we will take a break. If that's okay with you.
Yes, we will.
I'm Barbara Tillman. I'm a longtime resident of LD3 and formerly LD27, same general area, and this is a minority-majority district. While I know you can't start with existing maps, please take into consideration that it's fine for the most part, but there are some real problems with the current configuration, and I have submitted quite a few maps. 2 of my maps show 6 precincts in the LD3 region that were placed in LD4 the last time around. 2 of these precincts are wedged between LD3 and the O'odham Nation. These people then are represented by someone in Yuma, not Tucson. And then there are 4 urban precincts just north of the nation, and they are surrounded by LD3 on 3 sides.
These people are all represented by somebody in the Yuma area, and these people probably have never even been to Yuma. They certainly have all their associations with Pima County. Candidates seldom bother to campaign in these isolated precincts. So in general, not only am I interested with these, but do not make districts that leave isolated precincts where people have to travel, in this case, 4 hours to get to the main part of their precinct. Please make precincts much more succinct, and I've done this on the map. I also mapped the University of Arizona area. It's a center of a community of interest, student and faculty housing on all sides of the university. Currently, this area is in LD10, LD9, and LD3. Finally, I am concerned that we are only being asked to concentrate on communities of interest. We can't submit anything online as a comment that deals with something that we can't map. I want to know, when are we going to be given the opportunity to comment on ethnic representation, compactness, competitiveness, and the other criteria that are supposed to be roughly equally important as communities of interest? And finally, I think you have sent a fairly clear message about the value of the south and west side of town by locating your first hearing in the most affluent, least diverse part of our community, far northeast. And the second hearing is slightly better. It's farther east, but a few miles farther south. There were lots of hotels and campuses west of Campbell Avenue, including the entire downtown area. You could have chosen a place there, and you initially had planned to have a satellite meeting in cells, and that was eliminated. So I think you are not getting a representative sampling from our community. And just one last comment. The web link yesterday did not work. So you could not participate in the hearing yesterday from your home. Thank you.
Christine Ashley and Shelley Harris, or Tice.
I'm Christine Ashley. I've not done this before, so I'm going to take a stab. I have a disability, can you tell? I'm disabled, can you tell? I have disabilities, but I'm here to tell you I'm a registered nurse, and I have a master's in nursing. Just to let you know, because a lot of us don't know about disabilities. A lot of us don't know about disabilities, and I feel that we're not represented because, you know, some people don't know, some people do know. So I just want y'all to know I do have a disability. I don't look like it, but I do. Anyway, my area is LD9, and I arrived in Tucson in 2013. But I lived most of my life here in Arizona. I came from Phoenix, that's a long ways, to Tucson. Joke, it's only 100 miles. Anyway, a lot of my friends are from LD11, which is north, you know, like Pitcher Rock, Oro Valley, those places up there. I was just kind of wondering, I don't know the language, but you guys were talking about competitive, not competitive. Well, my friends, you know, they come from those areas over to my shopping area, my worship area, where I work. So I was just kind of wondering why Casa Grande is in with like LD11. You're going to get plenty of population with the open borders. We all know that the census is going to change. So I just thought I'd bring it up. You can redistribute it when we get a proper census. But I guess that's all I know how to say. I didn't make a map, but I thought it was very interesting, being my first time. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
That's right. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Welcome to Pima County, and thank you for conducting the sessions. My name is Shelley Keiss, and I am a resident of Quail Creek, Congressional District 2, Legislative District 2, and the Republican candidate for Legislative District 2 in 2016 and 2018. Sus electores no hablan el mismo idioma que ustedes. ¿Cómo se comunicar con ellos? That is the question that was posed to me in a 2018 candidate forum hosted by the Green Valley News and the Nogales International. You see, they knew that the communities of interest in LD2 were not only diverse with mining, ranching, agriculture, aerospace, military bases, internationally renowned tourism, international border, produce companies, logistics and supply chain organization, major ports of entry for commerce and foot traffic, wine growers, retirement communities, and suburban communities. This LD was diverse in its people, the needs of their community, and the needs of industry. The result of this map of communities from South Nogales, southern Tucson, down the I-19 corridor to all of Santa Cruz County to include the border communities of Nogales and Sassabee, left an economic void of representation in Arizona. Except for Representative Chris Ackerley in 2014 and 2016, this area was left to reach out to other representatives in Phoenix to carry their concerns and legislate on their behalf. All these industries suffered, and most importantly, Arizona suffered. I would ask the Commission to consider the importance of each of those industries in Arizona and map accordingly. When we talk about communities of interest and we consider where people church, shop, entertain, we must also consider where people work, their areas of professional expertise, the programs our schools should considering offering, and the future industry trends of the area. As a resident of Quail Creek, it is not appropriate to align LD2. Please consider Sarita, Corona de Tucson, Vale as communities of interest more aligned with Quail Creek and Madera Highlands. Unfortunately, LD2 has been left with little or no representation in Phoenix or Washington, and with only one of our Phoenix representatives who speaks Spanish. Pero hablo español para hablar con mis electores. Soy de Panama. And because I can communicate with my constituents in Santa Cruz and South Tucson, I would ask that you provide them with representation to meet their needs. LD2 needs to change. It must change not just for the people of the district, but for the economic prosperity of Arizona. Madam Chair, LD2 is one of the districts that has been harmed as a result of the current maps. Thank you.
Thank you so far for all the testimony. We will take a 10-minute break so that we can get refreshers. So we will get back here at 11:45, right? 10 minutes. Okay. How many, so we went through 30, 25?
24.
Okay.
The next one's 24.
Okay,
So
great.
23.
All right. Yeah, it's been very warm. Yeah.
Good morning, Chairman Newberg and members of the commission.
Okay, is that better? All right, I will start again. My name is Judith Alkire. I live in Green Valley, Arizona. I completed the online survey yesterday and drew a map, which I found a bit difficult, so I give you lots of kudos on your job that's ahead of you. Green Valley is a retirement community that offers activities and wellness, enjoyment, and a small town rural atmosphere with a little traffic. I worship in a church in Green Valley, and one of the missions of that church is to supply volunteer tutors and other helpers for the Continental School District and the Sahuarita School District. Now that we have a hospital in Green Valley and also one in Sahuarita, nearly all of my medical needs can be met close to home. I shop in both Green Valley and Sahuarita and enjoy dining at the local restaurants. Since Green Valley is a seasonal community, the population nearly doubles in the winter months. The businesses are well supported at that time of year. However, the other half of the year, the local businesses need a population that can support them with good paying jobs. On my street alone, there are 2 people who are employed by Raytheon and 1 that is employed by Fort Huachuca. Many neighbors are Air Force veterans, and they rely on Davis-Monthan for their pharmacy needs as well as their shopping. The 2 local mines supply good-paying jobs that are an integral part of the community. It is vital that Green Valley and Sahuarita be in the same district, along with similar communities to the east of Sahuarita, such as Rita Ranch, Corona de Tucson, and Vail. These are all very similar in our economic, our educational, and the fact that they are of semi-rural and adult populations. Our legislative district is what I drew on my map. It could include areas in Cochise County that would go down to Fort Huachuca and Sierra Vista, since we have things in common with that area. It was more difficult to draw the congressional district because, of course, the population would be 4 times what the legislative district could be. We are currently in Congressional District 2, which goes all the way to the New Mexico border. It includes a lot of the farm and smaller communities in the eastern part of the state. It probably would be more of a community of interest if we wrapped around the east side of Tucson and went up the Houghton corridor up to include the Tanque Verde Valley and possibly swinging west to include Oro Valley and even north to include Port Saddlebrook, which is off there all by itself. In the last redistricting 10 years ago, I spoke at that also. And in the end,
Thank you. Tom Chabin.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your service. You're uncompensated, and you're taking on a very controversial issue that will have a major impact on our state for a decade. I thank you. Madam Chair, I'm going to try to answer your question. How do you establish community of interest? Take one issue. Let's define it, water. How does the water issues draining the aquifers in Benson affect that community? How does a contaminated well in Tucson impact our community? How does the lack of water in Oro Valley going to limit growth there because of the lack of water, how is it going to impact that community? And then what is the issue, that issue as it applies to those communities? And who can represent and how? So how do you bring this to the forefront? So the example I would give would be the A-10 aircraft that the Air Force has been trying to retire for 20 years. The last commission established a competitive district represented by Giffords, Barber, McSally, and Kirkpatrick. When serving in this district, none of them radical. And all of them saved the A-10. All of them. All of them served our interests. So you ask, what do we lack if the community's interests can't be served if there isn't competitiveness? It can only be served if the districts are competitive. It's the only way our interests can be served. To your question about expanding the geographical boundaries of our districts because an increase in population. I know Mr. Watchman, Yate. I was in the Arizona legislature, served the Navajo Nation, Hopi tribe, Havasupai, and the city of Flagstaff for 5 years. It took me 6 hours to drive from Flagstaff to, and I can't remember the community that borders New Mexico, one of the chapters on the Navajo Nation. 6 hours to drive there. These districts you're going to draw in rural Arizona, may I continue just for a moment?
One moment, go ahead.
All right. Are going to be larger, and the communities of interest is going to be lost. I hope you might recommend that our House districts be separate districts to the legislature for a constitutional amendment. It's impossible for a legislator to serve, and it's harder, very difficult, for you to live up to your constitutional requirements with just 30 legislative districts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Darren, after Darren is Catherine Weasel, D. Maitland, Shannon Leonard. Please give us your name when you approach the podium.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, my name is Darren Venters. I live in Green Valley, Sahuarita, 85629, and I'm here today to tell you a bit about my communities of interest. My communities of interest include Green Valley, Sahuarita, Rita Ranch, Corona de Tucson, Vail, Benson, Sonoita, and Sierra Vista. We have retirees, veterans, many military retirees, and mixed with young and old folks in the communities. Our friends and neighbors are employed by Raytheon, the defense industries, the aviation industries, Davis Mountain Air Force Base, Fort Huachuca, and others are on active military duty. We also have many that are in the Air and Army National Guards, working in law enforcement, ranching, mining, and we see each other at social occasions and at church. Redistricting in 2010 lumped us into a non-competitive district. We have nothing in common with the West and South Tucson. We've not had representation interested in our point of view since 2010. Equal population of legislative districts and congressional districts is essential to have one person, one vote. In 2010, the redistricting populations were not equal. I believe that Green Valley, Sahuarita, Rita Ranch, Corona de Tucson, Vail, Sonoita, Sierra Vista, and Cochise County will have approximately the right number of voters to create that legislative district. For a congressional district, you could add Eastern Pima area north of the Rialto River, Saddlebrook and Marana, and fill it out with Graham, Greenlee, and Santa Cruz to balance the population. We share the common interest in mining, ranching, agriculture, the defense industries, and particularly in law enforcement. These areas are reasonably compact and contiguous. The boundaries are generally natural, rivers, the freeways, and county lines. Please make your priority for the redistricting to maintain the communities of interest where people of like interest meet, work, and play. We deserve representation that thinks the same as we do. Please do not add us to the Tucson Legislative District. Let Tucson be a majority-minority district. We thank you for having these meetings and appreciate the time and effort you put into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Weasel is the next speaker. After Catherine is Dee Maitland. After Dee Maitland is Shanna Leonard. No Catherine Weasel? After Catherine is Dee Maitland.
Can everybody hear me?
Proceed. Yes, we hear you.
All right, thank you. I want to thank you for taking your time to be here in Pima County, city of Tucson. We really need some help. So my name is Catherine Weasel. I reside at 1992 West Merlin Road. My zip code is 85713. I purchased a property there back in 2000. I have been with the West Side, Tucson Mountain Park, A Mountain, the barrios. I'm also neighbors with South Tucson. I actually reside on the West Side, and I have monthly meetings. I have been secretary, treasurer, vice president. Now I'm president, and I've been president for the past 10 years. And I would like to bring up some things. So everything I'm saying to you is true. I have brought all my documentation. I have a full box back there. If you have any questions, I can document everything I'm saying here. I just want to make sure that point is clear, because I'm very sure you'll have some questions. This is my neighborhood, Enchanted Hills neighborhood. When it started in 1960, it was a $25 million community. This is a census paper that was passed to me for Ward 1 meeting. They wanted to put in 170 houses in my neighborhood. West Side, me, Enchanted Hills, not me, Enchanted Hills, all the sides, barrios. We had so many people. We had over 200 people show up at Fred Archer Community Center to say no. And we said no with a firm voice, and we said no with reason, and we said no clearly. Just like we said no to sanctuary cities, but yet the cities are using city vehicles to transport illegals to their destinations. Just like I know for a fact that the city of Tucson has violated my voting rights. I have absolutely no representation. I have absolutely no backup. I have, in the last 3 years, been sanctioned, boycotted. I have all my work orders. I have all my pictures right here. I have everything. Whatever questions you have, please feel free to ask me. So, what has been going on? So, the city of Tucson has done a historical preservation video with the help of the state of Arizona to conduct their historical preservation on their own level, which is a use of infrastructure money as a disguise for eminent domain to steal barrios in neighborhoods in 85713. I have proof that they are trying to change the barrios' names. They are trying to change the lifestyle, the culture, the people. How convenient. I have questions and documents and everything. I also have postcards. I have everything. If you have any questions, please feel free. Contact me, Catherine Weasel at yahoo.com. I have a history, over 20 years, dealing. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Dean Maitland, Shannon Leonard.
I can't believe you're doing this 15 times. I really thank you. They're obviously paying you a lot. I'm Dee Maitland. I've lived in Marana for 15 years, watched it grow where I was the last street up the hill, and now it goes up to a Rich Carlson. My biggest concern is my legislative district is LD 11, which is a favored Republican district. But the biggest problem with LD 11 is it goes primarily into Pinell County. And so even though those of us who are not Republican or Proud Boys represent 60% of LD 11 in Pima County, we are always outvoted. Even with strong candidates, we cannot get anyone elected. The other one I worry about is Congressional District 1, which goes from Marana and Oro Valley all the way up to the north border. And I've looked what you have to deal with. It's really going to be tough on the population. Fortunately, we've had a representative who has been concerned because Marana and Oro Valley, which are the only part of Pima County in Congressional District 1, and we only represent 15% of the voters in Congressional District 1. We have a fair representative at this time, but what if we don't next time? The other thing is I want you to know that Marana, which has grown amazingly, almost 50% since 2010, should not be part of a legislative district that is mainly Pinell County. We're suburban, we get our news, we get our cultural entertainment, our newspaper, all of our information and connections are with Tucson. We're right straddling I-10. I can go from Dove Mountain down to Tucson within 30 minutes for all the things, and get in about 35, 40 minutes, get to the U of A, where most of our students will go, and where I go to take classes because they're very generous. So my concern is that right now, my whole community of interest will go to Oro Valley because of interchanges. It's easier to go to the library and Safeway and that in Oro Valley. But also that we are a bedroom community of Tucson, and all the vibrance, all the cultural things are part of Tucson and part of Marana. So please don't put us with a county that's primarily ag and mining when we're really part of the city of Tucson. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wait, which one? This one?
Both. Use both, please.
Oh, my God. Hi. Thank you, Chair Newberg and the Commission. My name is Shanna Leonard. I've grown up here in Tucson since 1964, still growing up. And I went to Rincon High School right down Arcadia. I was confirmed at Temple Emmanuel right nearby on Country Club, and I was married nearby in my brother's backyard. My son played jazz band right here at the Sheraton. And I have friends on the far east side, the west side, and the south side, and the foothills. My community of interest is Tucson. And I believe that democracy only works when we all talk to each other. Dividing people into like-minded bubbles encourages extremism. I've heard people today say we have nothing in common with others here in Southern Arizona. Really? Maybe you need to talk to more people. I believe that even though we have political opponents, we don't have enemies. In 2020, I co-founded a volunteer group called Tucson Vote Riders to take people to the polls for free. We did it because we wanted to do something as an antidote to this new extremism in politics. We didn't ask if people were Republican, Independent, or Democrat. We just asked where they lived and when they wanted to be picked up. We wanted to help them vote, and it was a blast, and we even had 15 minutes of fame on Kagan. There's something wonderful about helping everyone, no matter who they are, to get a voice, to vote. Most things aren't fair in life, but in our country, we have this ideal that we are all created equal, that we are equal before God and in the voting booth. But polarization and extremism is taking us away from this in Arizona. Last year in Science magazine, they had an article about the rise in extremist political speech. This isn't arguing about how much tax to pay. It's about people with hatred for other members of another party, as if we have nothing in common, as people have said, as if other Americans are not quite human. This is what really bothers me. I think it's wrong, and it's toxic to our mental health and our physical health, and it threatens our nation and our democracy. Many Arizonans don't like these trends, and in fact, in Pima County, they have left political parties. In 2000, Pima County had 19% independents or other. And in 2020, there was over 31% of voters not registered as Democrat or Republican. These independent voters want less divisiveness and more choice. That's why I'm glad we have a balanced IRC with Dr. Newberg as an independent. You get to be part of the solution to this problem, to reduce extremism by creating fair and competitive districts. I suspect candidates look at other parties' voters more kindly and humanly when they need their votes. Thanks again for your volunteering and your service to Arizona.
The next fourth speaker is Attorney for Denny Hurley, Matthew Lee H. Levin, Faith Ramon, and speaker 34 is Sandy Ochoa. Please make sure you announce your names when you come up to the podium. Again, the next four speakers, a Denny or a Penny Hurley, Matthew Levy, Faith Ramon, and Sandy Ochoa.
My name's Matthew Levitt, and yes, I did fill out the survey. Let me begin. Ladies and gentlemen of the Independent Redistricting Commission, I am here today to speak on behalf of Corona de Tucson, my home for the past 17 years. This bedroom community nestled at the base of the Santa Rita Mountains currently hosts somewhere between 10 and 20,000 souls depending upon the season. It can trace its roots to both the mining town Helvetia and the Alta Ranch, both of which are from the latter half of the 19th century. Today, Rosemont Copper Company draws copper ore from the old veins of Helvetia, and the Alta Ranch continues to raise beef. The suburban neighborhoods began as a military retirement community in 1963 and have since flourished into hundreds of houses, parks, a fire department, and 3 schools that feed a few small businesses. It is a community made up of policemen, military service families, teachers, correction officers, healthcare workers, Raytheon engineers, small business owners, contractors, miners, and retirees. We are very much a suburban community of interest that has close ties to Vail, Rita Ranch, New Tucson, Littletown, Sahuarita, Green Valley, Sonoyta, Patagonia, and the whole of Cochise County due to our heritages of mining and ranching coupled with our roots in Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. We do not share common interests nor goals with the ever-growing Tucson Metroplex that is currently seeking to annex us along with Vail, New Tucson, and Littletown through coercive means relating to utilities. In the most recent edition of the Vail Voice newspaper, our County District Supervisor Steve Christie entails new efforts to incorporate both Vail and Corona de Tucson in an effort to stop Tucson's increasing encroachment upon our sovereignty. For you see, Corona de Tucson's voice has been nullified by the total gerrymandering of our region thanks to the 2010 Redistricting Commission that saw the Vail School District divided between 3 legislative districts and 2 congressional districts in a districting map that is akin to broken glass that follows City of Tucson boundaries rather than highways and other physical barriers. We want to remain independent of Tucson and desire representation that is separate, for we are not one and the same, and we never will be. In summation, Legislative District 14 should encompass the whole of Cochise County, Vail, Rita Ranch, Corona de Tucson, Littletown, New Tucson, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, Sahuarita, Green Valley, Sonoyta, and Patagonia. Congressional District 2 should be encompassing these areas and along with more rural communities looping around the eastern edge of Tucson Metroplex, moving north so that southeastern Arizona may once again have its voice. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Next speaker The last name is Early.
Penny.
Penny.
I'm a little nervous. I don't do this every day of the week. But thank you for your time and effort, and we appreciate you doing this on behalf of Pima County and the state of Arizona. We currently live in Precinct 178, north of Tanque Verde and east of Bear Canyon. Our precinct spans to Houghton Road. We live in Pima County, not the city of Tucson. When we first moved here, we lived in Legislative District 30 in 2002. We had consistent representation for many years. Our area is more rural with larger lots, and LD 30 included the east side where we have more conservative values. For instance, we love our sheriff's department, and we definitely do not want their funds cut. We are protected by the Recon District Office, and we want them supported and respected. In fact, we had an irregularity in our security system, and the sheriff's department showed up out of concern before the actual alarm went off that we could hear. We love and trust our sheriff's department. Plus, we were not charged for a false alarm like we would be in city of Tucson. As you heard from the first woman that spoke, there are some very serious concerns about public safety on the east side and all of Tucson. Plus, many people on the east side of Pima County share the same values. Plus, we register our house with the sheriff's department while we're gone for any great length of time because we trust them. After the 2010 redistricting, LD 30 was targeted and to be redrawn to include Midtown Tucson, which is contrary to our conservative values. Thus, Tanque Verde Valley has lacked representation that we wanted for 10 years. Many people have become disfranchised, discouraged by local lack of representation, and many of us feel invisible. I would like to see our area maintain the conservative values we enjoyed with LE 30, generally from our area spanning along the Houghton corridor. LD 10 is not competitive or representative of our values. As a legislative district, which is entirely in Pima County, we need a stronger voice in Phoenix. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ramon. Sandy Ochoa is next.
Hello, my name is Faith Ramon. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Keotoa in Ga'ati District on the Thanatim Nation. I reside in Legislative District 5. As an Indigenous woman native to the O'odham land, I'm also a community organizer. I fight for injustice with Lucha. I'm also an active member of the Native American Church of Southern Arizona. As a water protector, I preserve and I carry the values of my Himadak. My faith, my community of interest are those that look like me, who share the same economic struggles. My geographic boundary would include the Thanatim Nation, Sanavir, Pascuayaki Reservation, Southside Barrios, as well as other communities within the draft. So many things have happened over the past 10 years. My communities are losing loved ones. Our schools are underfunded. Our elders cannot afford healthcare, and we're experiencing a water drought affecting all communities, but most importantly, the population has grown. The population of communities of color has grown in particular. My ask is that the commission needs to maintain the same number of districts where communities of color have the ability to elect the candidate of their own choosing, which is protected in the Voting Rights Act, and the commission must uphold this protection in the draft for the next 10 years of Arizona's elective representation. My community of Tucson, my home, the Thanatim Nation, my neighbors, the Pascuayaki, as well as the Southside Barrios, we deserve a minority-majority fair district. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Sandy Ochoa. The next four speakers, Kimberly Fitch, Elsie Benson, Margaret Cheney, Lyle Aldridge.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commission. Nice to be here seeing you all again. It's always a pleasure. My name is Sandy Ochoa. As I said, I am Arizona State Deputy Director for Mi Familia Vota. I am here to testify about the importance of making the 2021 redistricting process a fair and transparent process. The work I do every day reminds me about the importance of having an opportunity to decide who would best represent me and my community at the local and state and federal level. I know that the work starts with a redistricting process. How districts are drawn affects every political issue, from education to immigration and voting rights. In addition, paired with the census, redistricting plays a critical part on the amount of resources my local community receives for the next 10 years, providing communities like the one I grew up in and now living in with the opportunity to shape their future. My family's future is what is at stake. As the commission looks at the incoming data from the census and considers the shape of our community's representation, I ask that you center the communities of interest and that define and shape these communities that you will affect with the process, that you provide them with a voice and a chance in the political process. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my testimony, and I wish you all the best in this very important process for all of us in Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you.
The 36th speaker is Kimberly Fitch, 37 Elsie Benson.
Good afternoon. My name is Kimberly Fitch, and I have lived in Pima County for almost 40 years. I live in Congressional District Number 4 and Legislative District Number 9. I own a property management company in Tucson that employs 107 individuals with almost 4,000 multifamily units in Tucson, Casa Grande, and Sierra Vista. My husband and I raised 2 children who were educated and graduated from the Amphitheater Public Schools here in Tucson. The boundaries of the Amphi School District are the boundaries that I would like to suggest for my community of interest. This school district has a diverse population with 56% minority enrollment, and the interests in my community of interests are providing the best education as possible while each person is allowed to live, prosper, and grow. My children's lifelong friends that made at Amphi are a group with multicultural and ethnic backgrounds with a variety of lifestyles. And the various voices of this community should be represented at all levels of the government. Bipartisan participation in governing our country is necessary, so no segments of the population are left out. My request of you today is that you do not decrease the number of representatives whose constituents reside in Pima County at a federal level, and that you work to ensure that every vote is counted, including those of minorities, as this is the cornerstone of our democracy. Thank you for taking on this important role, and I trust that you will support the voting rights of all individuals. Thank you.
Hello. I live in the Avondale neighborhood. I bought my house online. I've never seen it, never been there, but I couldn't be happier. My name is Elise Benson, but I answer to crazy aging hippie chick. Anybody else? Yeah. I'm 75 years old, and I clearly remember my 5th grade teacher railing against the gerrymandering and railing against the Electoral College. So, Mrs. Russell, this is for you. The ordinary model for negotiating different things is, okay, here's the middle. You want to end up over here, and you want to end up over here. So when you're going to negotiate, the one thing you're going to do is, you know you're going to have to give up some stuff. So you start over here so you can give up some stuff.
that you didn't really care about and kind of end up where you want to. And your opponent is going to do the same. They're going to ask for more than they really want and give up stuff. So you never really get anywhere with that model. I worked in Oregon with a conflict resolution model that I would like to suggest as maybe a former or future resolution. How that worked was the two sides, usually it was resource area managements, but the two sides would come together and we would say, you're alive. I would say, you want this and you want this. We're going to make, you have to agree out the gate. We're going to have an independent, unbiased panel make a decision. You write your plan, and we'll make the decision. Okay, how that works is then that drives both sides right back to the middle because they don't want to be seen as an outlier. They want to be picked. So this is a good model. I would like to suggest that we set up redistricting as a high school competition, give them the pertinent data, the physical, cultural, natural boundaries that may exist, give them the criteria they need, give them a cash prize for doing it, and look at the benefit. You have somebody else to blame. Thank you.
Next speaker, Margaret Cheney, Lyle Aldridge, Chris King.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Margaret Cheney. I've lived in Tucson since 1991. I'm a teacher for over 20 years, and I'm the precinct captain for Precinct 100. I'm also the president of the Tucson Education Association. I'm here to ask the commission to use its wisdom and experience when determining the districts this year. Gerrymandering is a practice intended to establish an unfair political advantage for a particular power. This is done also to take away the voices of the underrepresented. The fact that during the introduction you stated it was good to see so many of you again signaled to me that some in the audience are here to pack the decision as to how the districts are drawn. As a history teacher, I recall lessons on Jim Crow after the 14th Amendment was enacted. I think how easy it is to take away the voice of the people who have historically and presently are underrepresented. I look around the room and I can see that I am underrepresented ethnically, but that doesn't mean we don't have to have anything in common. My community has nothing in common with minoritized communities. It's the same logic segregationists have used for decades. This commission needs to look at how the redistricting will serve the common good. How will communities' economic and natural resources be impacted? My community of interest is large. I'm a public school teacher of TUSD, which also includes the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. I'm a parent, a woman, a homeowner, a person of color, and almost ready to retire. I am certain my viewpoint is not the minority. Tú eres mi otro yo. No doubt I have much in common with many in the audience, and no doubt we disagree on many things as well. But one thing we cannot and must not disagree on is the state and federal constitution and the rights of the people. One of the best things about Arizona is the practice of propositions and referendums. It is in these actions that you hear the real voice of a diverse people. It is varied and authentic. Let's keep that voice loud and clear. Keep it diverse, keep it authentic, keep it competitive. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move to the next speaker, I just want to reassure our public who's listening. You know, this is our first take on listening tour. We're learning a tremendous amount. Everybody who's showing up, your data is being collected and is deeply valued. We're also taking note of who we're not hearing from. And we also care deeply about those communities as well. So please understand that all of this data matters on multiple levels. And with that, thank you very much.
Madam Chairman and members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Lyle Aldridge. I have resided in Pima County for 58 years. For the last 29, I've been living in the Tanque Verde Valley, which you've heard quite a bit about yesterday and a little bit more about today. At the risk of boring you a little bit, I'll go through some of the things we have in common as a community of interest. We are mostly single-family homes owned by the people who live in them. We tend to live on larger lots. Unlike people in the city of Tucson, we don't tend to live 10 feet from our neighbors, and I think that makes us a lot less interested in controlling what our neighbors do. Most of our children go to non-TUSD schools in the Tanque Verde district, some in the Vail district, some in the one TUSD school in the area, Sabino High School, whose attendance area happens to be currently split by the boundaries between Legislative District 9 and Legislative District 10. We have a lot in common with the people in the foothills. We don't rely on city services except for one thing, which I'll get to. We rely on the sheriff for our law enforcement. We get our fire protection and our emergency medical services from private contractors. We get our waste disposal from private contractors. We live semi-rural lifestyles in many of our neighborhoods. We have kids in the 4-H. They have animals, goats, horses, and one that's important to me, a lot of us used to have wells. The 2010 redistricting carefully sliced up the community of interest around the outskirts of Tucson so that every district included large segments of the city of Tucson and its densely populated area of people with whom we do have a lot in common, but we have a lot of conflicts of interest. As a result of that redistricting, as it currently is, our state legislators in particular feel no need to campaign in our area. I used to see, for instance, Democrat candidates walking the streets, even in the Tanque Verde district. I met Gabrielle Giffords on my own front porch. Since 2010, I haven't seen a Democrat candidate anywhere around. And one way you ask how this harms our district is water. Next to my driveway, my wife and I have a deep, dry hole that used to be a well that served our neighborhood, our house, and our neighbors had wells just like it. The city of Tucson has pumped all the water out of our wells, and now they propose to charge us 40 or 50% more to deliver water to us than they do to the city of Tucson. The people who live in the city of Tucson, I'm sure, are glad to have us subsidizing their water rates. But if I want to talk to a state legislator about this, my legislator represents those people and primarily represents those people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker number 40, Kristen. 41, Patrick Robles.
Good morning, members of the Redistricting Commission. Welcome to Pima County, and thank you for the job you're doing. My name is Chris King. I live in Congressional District 2, Legislative District 10, Precinct 218. I'm an elected Republican precinct and state committeeman. I have lived in my current home, for 17 and a half years. I'm retired from the United States Air Force, where I served over 20 years, to include 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and stationed or worked at 3 of the major military installations here in Arizona. I'm a member of the Vail School District Governing Board. My children graduated from the Vail School District, and my daughter, her husband, and my grandchildren live in the same legislative district, but different school district. We purchased our home due to that school district and the large veteran and professional population on the southeast side of Tucson/Pima County area. Congressional District 2 spans 4 of Arizona's 15 counties and is a mix of rural, suburban, border town, and big city. This doesn't fall under the communities of interest model by any stretch of the imagination. Currently, Legislative District 10 doesn't fit the communities of interest model either, as defined by the Arizona Constitution. The far east side is conservative and professional. The center of District 10 is independent and blue-collar worker. The west side is located near the University of Arizona and is hyperinflated, Democrat, and densely populated. LD10 in the last 10 years has had only one state representative from the Republican Party, which could be considered an anomaly, and currently does not have any party representation at the state level. Prior to the last redistricting commission, Pima County had a strong voice in Phoenix and at the state legislature. The last commission squelched our voices. My communities of interest include veterans from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base and Fort Huachuca, law enforcement, border patrol, retirees, and professionals from the major defense contractors located here along the Houghton Corridor, Corona de Tucson, Sierra Vista, Quail Creek, Saurita, Green Valley, and Vail. I'm aware of the requirements you have as an independent redistricting commission. Your statutory requirements to follow the Voting Rights Act, keeping districts equally populated, compact and contiguous, respecting communities of interest, utilizing geographic features, and lastly, competitive districts, when there isn't a significant detriment to the aforementioned goals. Unfortunately, this didn't occur the last time district boundaries were drawn. I've heard many times this morning where competitiveness was posited as an opinion, yet the city of Tucson neglects to allow this position within its own boundaries due to rejecting ward-only voting in general elections for city council members. In closing, I implore you to bring the boundaries of our school district, the Vail School District, under only one legislative district instead of three. That would be 10, 11, or 10, 14, and 2. The time has come to bring communities' interest back instead of competitiveness. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, everybody. My name is Patrick Robles, and I'm a precinct committee member in Precinct 155 in LD2. And I'm also a student at the U of A and active community member. Now, Precinct 155 is 5 minutes south of Tucson. All of the majority of the folks who live in that precinct go to the south side of Tucson to get the services and care that they need to live a life, quite frankly. LD2 also shares the south side of Tucson with Green Valley and Sahuarita. I believe that Pima Mine Road should be the dividing line between a legislative district that differs between the south side of Tucson and Green Valley. I think Green Valley and Sahuarita should have their own district. You know, we're a strong community, a community of working class folks, a young community with families who attend public schools. It's a community where the Sunnyside School District also resides. And the Sunnyside School District also has 2 legislative districts. You have LD3 and LD2. I believe that only the Sunnyside School District should only be in one legislative district. I strongly believe that our barrios should be together. I believe our neighborhoods in the south side of Tucson should be together because we share many commonalities. You have community members who attend the same high school as their grandparents. You know, that's the tight-knit community that the south side of Tucson is. Sure, I may be represented, but we may not have, but that does not mean that that representation is responsive to the diverse needs of the community of the south side of Tucson. I just want to reiterate, let's keep our barrios together. Thank you very much for holding this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Chris Ashley, then Brookhart, Brenda Simone, Richard Hernandez.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Thank you again for holding these hearings, and thank you for serving in this process. I am Chris Ackerley. During the week, I am a high school math teacher and a resident of West Tucson. Over the weekends, I am a recovering politician. In the 52nd legislature, I had the privilege of serving Legislative District 2 in the Arizona House of Representatives. Therefore, my party affiliation is no secret. But to mention this, of the 25 legislators that have been elected from Pima County, I am one of only 4 who has had the opportunity to serve in the majority. It has been mentioned here earlier today, and I could speak at length how that has disadvantaged Pima County when it comes to public policy and budget negotiation issues at the Capitol. But we're here talking about communities of interest. And so I would like to submit to you that the failure of the 2010 Commission to fully consider communities of interest has had a detrimental effect on the body politic. And I'd also like to try to convince you to maybe view competitiveness in a new light. The current legislative District 2 was constructed of 3 very divergent communities to be safe seats for Democrats. My election was never supposed to happen. Yesterday, a gentleman spoke suggesting that the result of combining such divergent districts resulted in legislators being elected that would be focused on local concerns and be more prone to compromise. While I appreciate the comment, first, I don't think he would have made that statement if the 2-to-1 voting registration edge had been flipped the other way. And second of all, I can tell you that the reality is very much the opposite. The residents of Sarita and Green Valley did not care that I fixed an issue for regarding flood control plains in eastern Santa Cruz County, any more than the residents of Nogales cared whether I worked on taxation issues for the city of South Tucson. Nor did the residents of southern Tucson care that I fixed an issue, governance issue for Green Valley Recreational. The fact that the communities had no common interests meant that in the end, success in the general election was based almost primarily on national partisan politics. It left Santa Cruz County completely marginalized, and it means that almost by necessity, that the representative is either going to be a progressive from the Green Valley Sarita area or someone who is totally immersed in the internal Democrat politics of southern Tucson. So I would further submit to you that there is good reason that that criteria, that 6th criteria about competitiveness is accompanied by a clause that refers to the other ones, because I believe that competitiveness is embedded in those. If we construct districts based upon communities of interest, maybe competitiveness will be about who can best represent the area rather than partisan affiliation. Again, thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Benjamin Brookhart. Greetings to the chair, to the Madam Chair and Vice Chair and all members and staff of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission, AIRC. My name is Benjamin Brookhart, and I live in Congressional District 3, Legislative District 11, Supervisory District 3, and School District 6, which is Marana Unified School District. And I graduated from there in 1996. I do not live in the Tucson city limits, but I have a Tucson address. I live in Picture Rocks community and am assigned to precinct 70 in Pima County. My residence is west of I-10 along the Saguaro National Monument, but my communities of like interest is east of I-10. I work, shop, socialize, and worship with citizens of Marana, Oro Valley, Casas Adobes, and the northern end of Tucson. I work east of Tucson, or I work in Tucson east of the freeway. I worship along with members of Desert Sun Community Church on Cortero Road, Church of Christ on Ina Road, and Faith Community Church on Orange Grove Road, frequently within the last 10 years of all are east of I-10 in LD9. I shop and socialize with many friends of like interest in LD9 and LD10, yet I live in LD11. I want you to kind of picture this for a second. So 10 years ago, I was connected with everybody that's in the north end of LD9, right, as a single LD. And yet, I never or rarely travel up to Casa Grande in a course of a year, and yet that's my LD. Just to give you a sense of that, how they have been cracking and packing these LDs. Furthermore, I also want to emphasize, after using districtbuilder.com redistricting tool, it is very possible to draw 3 southern border districts because there's no way of getting around it. Tucson and Pima County is going to get bifurcated because it's larger than 1 million people. So what I would suggest is kind of a half moon shape where the northern rural area of the county sweeps on the way around to Cochise County, Santa Cruz County, Greenlee, Graham, Pinal County on the Congressional District, keeping it compact. So it would be compact, contiguous, equal population, and you would have your minority majority district in Mid-South Tucson District. So what you're seeing here is that there is a lot of conflict between the rural areas and the municipal areas or the inner cities. And also I want to emphasize that as much as people talk about polarization, competitiveness also breeds polarization. So make sure that we're paying attention to that as well. Last time around, my communities of like interest were split into two different legislative districts. The Pima County portion of LD 11 was connected to LD 9 as one district. The previous AIRC drew districts that were not compact, that did not have equal population and number, and were focused on competitiveness. I do not want this to happen again. Please follow the Arizona Constitution as you draw district lines this time. Last thing that I would say is I would like you all, if you could, practice moderation moderately. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brenda Simon. I'm a Pima County resident. My husband and I are self-employed. I work as a committee member of my HOA. And it seems that the last Redistricting Commission did not adhere to the U.S. Constitution and the Voting Rights Acts as directed by the Arizona Constitution. It's critical to adhere to the 6 criteria laid out in the Constitution to avoid extreme competitiveness, which seems to have been the focus of the last commission. The Arizona Constitution requires that both congressional and state legislature districts be contiguous, geographically compact, and respect communities of interest, all to the extent practical. It's the community of interest that we're here discussing today, and of course, that's critical because we choose where we live based on economics, based on the people that we see in the communities. It's just how it works. That's how we adhere as a community. That's what makes a community. It's concerning in southern Arizona where we see districts which could be contiguous but representing communities of interest but are currently deeply divided districts and not wholly representative of communities of interest, leaving nearly half our population feeling unrepresented. As one of those who added to the growth of the population in Arizona, the numbers in the districts need to correct the previous maps to be drawn as closely as possible to contain equal population, instead of some of the districts having 12% more population than other currently. As an unincorporated area massively expanding in our new housing area community, economically we're all similar. It doesn't matter about what our racial differences may or may not be. We're a community based on so many different things. We live in a rural area. It's where we choose to live. We own our own transportation for work and shopping. Our neighbors are families with children. People work at Raytheon, government jobs, self-employed, retired veterans. And so that's what I ask that you keep in mind most of all, what you're trying to do, the communities of interest that matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyra Sandershaw, Brenda Scarrow, Gabriel Casares, Kelly.
Buenos dias. As commissioners, you have a daunting challenge. Mostly you're obligated by law to do what you have to do. Given that as your primary directive, yet you have to appear like you're listening, that you care, that you're compassionate, that you're thoughtful of all the Arizona residents. That's one tall order to fill. Thank you for doing what you do, but that's the challenge that you have. My name is Richard Hernandez. I'm not here to talk about my college education, my religious preference, my economic status, the fact that I'm retired, the fact that I'm gay, the fact that I'm Hispanic, the fact that where I live, I speak different languages. I'm here to talk to you about voting, elections. You have the power, commissioners, to make a huge change. The narrative today from elected folks is it's my way or the highway. I'm right, you're wrong. That's what we have today. But you commissioners have the power to change that, given all the circumstances you have. Let me draw this to your attention. We just had a City of Tucson election, City Council. Less than 20% people voted, depending on what ward you are. So let me tell you, commissioners, what I think that says, what I think it says. You hear that? 80% of the people are not voting. They're giving you direction. 80% of this community is not voting. Your job, if you can, is to bring them back. Let them be part of the collective. Let them vote. Let them care. People are very passionate up here. I listen to them, mostly because everybody has some kind of self-interest. I'm not here about self-interest. I'm saying as a greater community, we need to bring back that 80% in the city of Tucson that didn't vote. Can you do that? How will you do that? Are you listening to these 80%? We have a room full, but you realize how many more people that means that are not here? That's your challenge. I wish you the best, and it is time for change. Whatever you decide to do, God bless.
Thank you.
Ira Sunshine.
Hello, Madam and Commission. My name is Brenda Sparrold. I'm a longtime resident of the Tanque Verde Valley. I attended Tanque Verde schools and worked and played all over Tucson. I'm now raising 4 children who are attending Tanque Verde schools. And after having worked all over Tucson, I have a private practice on the east side that supports my family. My district is LD10, which has a history of being politically competitive, despite what others have said. I have been politically active. I've canvassed for my representatives who represent me well, I feel. I want to advocate for districts that sensibly represent my community's interests rather than artificially creating competition based only on political party. My community is united around providing the best possible education for our children, which is a common value, I think, but also for our community around balancing our high need for good transportation infrastructure with the delicate balance of the riparian and green environment that we live in. Nearly all of us work outside the community. All of us need to shop in the city of Tucson, which we're so close to. We have a great deal more in common with our close neighbors in the city of Tucson than with suburbanites on the different corners of Tucson who have different infrastructure needs, who have different communities that they're living in, who have different environments that they're living in. The proposal that a district that includes Tanque Verde intentionally avoid the city that's an absolutely integral part of our daily lives doesn't best serve the interests of the Tanque Verde community. Thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker,
Thank you.
Tom.
Thank you for letting me speak to the commission. My name is Tom Przelski. I am a former member of the Arizona State House. I represented the South Side for 6 years between 2003 and 2009. It was a very different district. Right now, I still live on the South Side. I live within about a 10-minute walk of the house where my grandmother grew up, which was recently sold by Diane Keaton for $2.5 million. My grandfather is buried in Vail. I'm saying this not to brag, but just to say that there are people in this community who have very deep roots in this community, folks who did not move here from other places. And I think we need to respect that when we draw districts. I agree with some of the previous speakers that Green Valley does not belong in a district with the south side of Tucson. And I am not saying that for the same reasons they may have said. It's just that on the south side of Tucson, we are from families that have been there for a long time. A lot of Mexican Americans, a very significant Native American and African American population as well that are well established. We have common issues, common problems, issues with infrastructure, issues with how our neighborhoods are developing. that go back for decades. Most importantly, there is a leadership on the south side of Tucson that has been well established for years, people who have been working in the community for a very long time. And contrary to what some previous speakers have said, we're currently represented by an individual from Sahuarita and an individual from Green Valley. And I don't have any problem with them as representatives, except that they need to be educated about these big problems that we have on the south side. It's harder to do that when they don't come from our community. The other issue is it's kind of subtle, but I would argue that by doing that, we've kind of diminished the influence of this well-established leadership that we have on the south side of Tucson. People like, when I was in the legislature, we had people like Victor Soltero, who'd been in the community for decades, who had been a city councilman in South Tucson. Prior to that, we had people like Ramon Valadez, who had been born in the district and raised in the district. People like Carmen Cajero, who was the widow of a man who cut hair in the district. So, this is the kind of representation we should be seeing. And it's difficult to do that when you don't draw the district in such a way to make sure that those communities are represented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Priya Sundaration. I'm a Tucsonan, born and raised in the Catalina foothills, an environmental attorney, teacher, and voter protection advocate. I want to thank you, commissioners, for being here and hearing from our communities of interest here in Pima County. And it's certainly not an easy job that you're not getting paid for to balance all of the criteria that you need to. I think there's going to be some difficult decisions, obviously, in the process. I think my main point today is that we need to hear from arguably Arizona's most important communities of interest, which are our Native nations. And I know that we had the opportunity to hear from some in Pima County with the possible cells location that we were going to have, which unfortunately got canceled. So in order to hear from those folks, I urge that we make sure that any additional future hearings are located in those communities, so it's easier for those community members to be able to show up and voice their concerns and provide that community of interest testimony that you're looking for. And to the chair's question, it is very possible that some of those communities of interest do need to be kept together. I refer to some of the excellent testimony we heard earlier from Ms. Grijalva, Ms. Ramon, et cetera, about which of those communities should be kept together, and again urge that those additional hearings be held in those communities so that we can hear specifically from those groups. I also recognize, I understand that many commenters asked for specific suburban or rural districts to be drawn, excluding the cities like Tucson. I appreciate those concerns that some of the rural issues or suburban issues are very different from city issues. But on the other hand, there are, as many have mentioned, a lot of commonalities within our Southern Arizona communities in general. And we have to keep in mind, as you certainly do, that Arizona's population growth has occurred mainly in and around our cities. So we will have to account for that. Please watch out for maps and lines that would pack or crack our city dwellers, thereby diluting our votes. We heard testimony earlier from Ms. Tellman about certain precincts that have been carved out and kept in other districts that don't seem to make much sense. Change in population increase has occurred in Arizona, whether we like it or not. It has happened, and we need to fairly and accurately account for it in the maps that you draw. All of the criteria are important. Competitiveness is important, so that the representatives will listen to their constituents. Compactness is important, so that representatives are physically available to their constituents. All of these are important, and that's, again, feeds into the tough job you have ahead of you. I also want to specifically respond to one of the arguments I was hearing earlier, that Pima County may be at a disadvantage because our legislators have always served in the minority in the legislature. I'll just wrap up by saying I think it's a little disingenuous. Doesn't mean we need to create safe districts for any particular party. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Gabriella Kelly, and then after her is Michelle Ludwig, Jim Hadley, Dorothy Liu, and the last speaker will be Eric Nelson.
Skugdash, Anya Nyapjogi, Gabriela Cáceres Kelly, Bismoch Gup Amjad. Good day and welcome to the ancestral homelands of the Tohono Nation and the Pascoyaki tribe. I'm from the community of Bismo'o and Gup, which are located on the Tohono Nation, most of which is in District 3. And I currently live in Tucson on the northwest side. I am Legislative District 9 and Congressional District 2. I am a community organizer, former educator, and most recently an elected official who serves all of Pima County. I think this is significant because I am the first Native American to hold an elected countywide seat and have spent the last 8 months or so dispelling stereotypes and addressing misinformation and disinformation about Native American communities, Latino communities, low-income, working-class communities, and our immigrant population. Earlier there had been a question about how people are being harmed by not having representation in the districts. And I think it's really important to recognize that that's already happening. We are already talking about communities who are targeted for militarization, and we are seeing the very real disparity within health access and internet infrastructure and continuation and on and on and on. I primarily focus most of my community outreach efforts on voting and have had to listen to 125 different bills that have been specifically targeted to take away the votes from Latino, Native American, and low-income disabled voters, and on and on and on. And so I do want to please ask that you do hold a session in the CELS community. Again, I have worked there and lived there. I'm from there. I'm very much connected to that community. And here in Tucson, I think there's some kind of misconception that only natives are on the reservations and not recognizing that you're in Tucson, Shtukshan, which comes from our language, in the state of Arizona, Arshon, which comes from our language. Our representation is here, just not in any type of leadership. And when we talk about the decisions that we're making for our constituencies, you have to recognize we've always been here. We're still here. We're going to continue to be here. And so when we're talking about these, this lack of representation for certain values, you're talking about opinions, but what we're talking about is human rights, and whether or not those human rights are being addressed because these communities are very much in harm's way. Thank you.
Thank you. Hanley, Dorothy Liu, and the last speaker again is Eric Nielsen. Michelle Ludwig.
She had to leave.
And the next speaker is Jim Hanley. After Jim is Dorothy Liu.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. It's so nice to see you here, and I want to tell you how much we appreciate the work that you do. This is a very difficult task. Everyone recognizes that, I think. The issue of fairness in elections is probably the hottest topic in the country today. In fact, that issue caused a bill to be prepared which has very wide-ranging reform of elections. And one of the most important reforms in the For the People Act is to do what we can to avoid gerrymandering. It's widely recognized that when states have redistricting drawn by the majority party of the legislature, that gerrymandering happens. And so with the creation of the Independent Redistricting Commission in Arizona, we really made a lot of headway towards creating more fairness in representation of the state. So I want to talk about competitiveness, because if you work to see that the legislative districts and the congressional districts are drawn in such a way that the two parties have very equal representation, we're going to have the competitiveness that we seek, in which these parties have to win the votes of the people in their districts. This idea of communities of interest does not go in that direction. We've heard people talk about wanting to have the same types of people represented, not a diverse number of people represented. And I think that that is going in the wrong direction. So if we have this competitiveness by party, we will have better ideas coming forth. The parties are going to, as I said, they're going to have to win those votes by appealing to the interests of the voters in those communities. We're also going to see a lot of competition for registration in those districts. And so we will increase the number of registered voters. And that's what we want in this democracy. So I want to, again, commend you for the volunteer time that you have been putting into this, and also to be holding these hearings. Somebody said that you had 15 of these, and to hear so many people speaking today, I think I might be dead last, it is really remarkable that you would endure this. And I hope that you'll have some wisdom imparted, and I know that you'll make a better decision for hearing from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last two speakers, Dorothy Liu and Eric Nielsen. Dorothy?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, members of the commission. I am Dorothy Liu, a member of the Pima County since birth, a retired educator, and a representative and a volunteer executive director for Pan Asian Community Alliance Program Coordinator. Representative not only of the of the Asian Pacific Islander community, but a concerned Pima County, Arizona resident, and also that I want all of our communities to understand what's going on and to be able to represent themselves. I ask that you continue with the support of the three multi-minority majority districts in Pima County. These competitive districts provide community candidates for the elections and whatnot. In addition to the need for more language translation interpreters because of the minority API population that is among the fastest growing in Arizona. This would improve our community outreach of color for the communities. We ask that you extend the CIO survey deadline and the ability to be able to upload hearing recordings and minutes in a timely manner. We really appreciate all the work that you guys are going to be doing. I know it's hard, and we hope that we can get a better representation for the state of Arizona.
Thank you.
I'm last. Good afternoon. I'll make this brief. My name's Eric Nielsen. I'm a 28-year resident of Tucson. I live at Broadway and Alvernon. Those of you not familiar with Tucson, that's right smack in the middle of the city. AZ2 is my congressional district. CD10 is the legislative. I want to thank you for your 10-year commitment to the IRC. My guess is that you're in for a long and winding road. My community of interest is with those speaking in favor of competitive districts. I'm happy to live in a congressional district that's flipped repeatedly in its history, as you all know it has, and it may very well again in a year. I know others may disagree, but I believe that competitive districts encourage constructive and moderate dialogue, and I believe our country needs more of that, not less. The Arizona Supreme Court ruled that all criteria be given equal weight, so competitiveness is no less important than the others. I'm encouraging you to draw districts that are both competitive and reflective of communities of interest, and I know how difficult that's going to be. Figuring out congressional districts that get close to 800,000 people in a state where 68% of the people are living in Maricopa County and a third of the voters are non-affiliated is a tall order. But I thank you for what you're doing, and I guess that wraps it up. Good afternoon.
Well, it looks like we heard our last speaker, and so thank you on behalf of the commission. We really, really appreciate your spending time with us on this Sunday. It's been very, very enlightening. We had 50+ speakers, and so we appreciate everybody joining us. As you saw today, we do have our website that's available, and so please take a look at it. There's easy-to-use tools that will be there. Soon we'll have the U.S. Census data included in that, so you'll have opportunities to learn about the roles that we're doing. You'll have opportunities to refine and submit your maps reflecting your community of interest. And so we encourage you, again, to go online and to use our maps. We also encourage you, as has been pointed out, to encourage your friends and your fellow folks in your area to go onto the website and to encourage them to look at what we're trying to do today. It's very, very important. Anyone can look online and get the information. All of the proceedings are available, our records, our information. So if you do have questions, it is available online for records. And so we encourage you to do that. This meeting is hereby adjourned. We will have one more meeting tomorrow. Our final meeting will be in Mesa, and that'll conclude this round of our listening tours. And so we appreciate the public for being here and being on WebEx. And so this meeting is hereby adjourned. We thank you. Safe travels and be safe. Thank you. I'm sorry?